fellow Americans.
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
Who are shouting? Just a moment.
I'm not defending them in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planting information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually, the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plan in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid. and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding disinformation? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect, it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi or agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
And it might sound radical, colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organisation should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
We become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done, and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals
So
are
do
not
you
impinged.
think
Number
COVID
one.
do you think
And number
COVID
two,
do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
You would know this as a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie and I work very hard on it every morning over a cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email, and all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
You killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was
already
still in
done.
Parliament,
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone, or to take the nation to war partway, or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip, because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in. So what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, They get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a second." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." I said, "We're going to war with Iraq? Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, "I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show, but if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Well, one of the 4 principal functions of the CIA is to gather intelligence and ideally forward it to the president, the users of information, the policymakers, as they say. There are other functions, however, some of them more legitimate than others. One is to run secret wars, the covert action that's written and talked about so much, like what's happening in Nicaragua today from Honduras. Another thing is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA. And unfortunately, of course, it overlaps into the gathering of information. You have contact with a journalist, you will give him true stories, you'll get information from him, you'll also give him false stories. For example, in my war, the Angola war that I helped to manage, 1/3 of my staff was propaganda. Ironically, it's called covert action inside the CIA. Outside, that means the violent part. I had propagandists all over the world, principally in London, Kinshasa, and Zambia. We would take stories which we would write and put them in the Zambia Time, and then pull them out and send them to a journalist on our payroll in Europe. But his cover story, you see, would be that he'd gotten them from his stringer in Lusaka, who had gotten them from the Zambia Time. We had the complicity of the government of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, if you will, to put these false stories into his newspapers. But after that point, the journalists, Reuters and AFP, the management was not witting of it. Now, our contact man in Europe was, and we pumped just dozens of stories about Cuban atrocities, Cuban rapists. In one case, we had the Cuban rapists caught and tried by the Ovimbundu maidens who had been their victims, and then we ran photographs that made almost every newspaper in the country of the Cubans being executed by the Ovimbunda women who supposedly had been their victims.
These were fake photos?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't know of one single atrocity committed by the Cubans. It was pure, raw, false propaganda to create an illusion of communists, eating babies for breakfast and that sort of totally false propaganda.
The only reason that I'm allowed to ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the press gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome, everybody, to Redacted on this Monday. I'm Clayton.
I'm Natalie.
So good to have you here on the show where we cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores, or at least they put their propagandic spin on it. We're going to dive deep into the Maui Fires tonight and what exactly is behind it. There's plenty of theories that are floating around online, but we're going to stick to the facts. But the facts are troubling in and of themselves, and we'll let you draw your own conclusions about what caused it and who's behind it and what does the future hold for the island of Hawaii.
Plus, we have a new special counsel investigation of Hunter Biden for his litany of ne'er-do-wells. And we're going to talk about it because it does not follow the normal formula of the Mueller investigation or the Durham investigation. Why is that? We're going to break that down and see, is there two-party justice system? I'm just putting it out there. Plus, we're going to look at documents showing just how much of Dr. Fauci is owed in royalties, how much he cashed in during the pandemic, while you were told not to stay home and not make any money and just collect stimulus checks.
Also, Zelensky decided to fire a bunch of people in Ukraine because he's shocked to find out that gambling is going on in this establishment. Can't believe what's actually happening there, even though we reported on it months ago and it was called Kremlin propaganda at the time. But now it turns out the corruption was very, very high, very, very deep. We'll talk about all of that. Plus, unbelievable story from the U.S.-Mexico border where child concentration camps discovered by whistleblowers revealing what is actually happening there, to the tune of thousands of children being kept in certain buildings, while the Biden administration and the Governor Greg Abbott administration in Texas basically ignores what's actually happening at the United States southern border. All of that and more as Redacted starts right now. We hope you guys are enjoying your summer, the last days of summer, if you can believe this, creeping up into the fall of the year when it's back to school, back to work time. And we've got, we're going to be taking a few days off here over the next week or so, a family vacation. So all of us, not just kids at camp, it'll be the Morris family, the Morris Griswold family vacation. So we're going to be off for a few days. Road tripping and seeing the sights with Clark Griswold driving. Beep, beep. No, we're going to have some fun.
It will be Griswold level because all grandparents are coming.
Yes.
So I'm going to come back bald.
Bald.
Are you guys going to Wally World Europe?
Wally World. Yep, they're going to go see Wally World. Hope they're open.
Moose outside should have told you.
Yeah. I was going to say, hopefully none of them come home on the hood of the roof of the car. So.
Right. Why are these sandwiches wet? Oh, man. Great.
Clark, she's dead.
Oh, boy. Good to see everyone here. And we apologize. We've been tweaking some audio things. A whole new setup. And so when we come back from a little vacation in a few days, we're going to have a whole new setup and stuff. But the team has been sort of tweaking some audio, fixing some things. So if you might notice some changes tonight, just bear with us as we kind of walk through it all. But we should mention we have a daily newsletter. And you can still get that newsletter tomorrow morning before we hit the road and spend a few days off. All you need to do to get our great newsletter is go to redacted.inc and put in your email address and then click submit. Then you'll receive a welcome email. It'll go to your spam folder. Gmail labels us as dangerous. It might go to your dangerous folder. And then you just need to click confirm that you want to receive the newsletter. And then tomorrow morning, bright and early, we will publish that newsletter. Natalie does an amazing job writing the newsletter. I go in and do some editing and add some different things, but it's a team effort here in our house to try to bring you a great newsletter that you can read in about 5 or 10 minutes over your cup of coffee every morning. And it's a good time. So anyway, go to redacted.inc.
Suavero Lepew is my favorite new username. Says Clayton was just on a vacation. Yeah, Clayton, too much having fun. So what do you have to say to that?
Hey, you can never have too much vacation.
Thank you, Suavero Lepew.
Now, to be fair,
my favorite username.
Yes, I had to take my kids to a camp, and then I was there nearby. So yes, I took. Let's be fair. Back in February, Natalie did her little trip with her family.
Oh, you want to do this in front of everybody?
You just did. You just decided to do it.
Okay. All right, we're gonna keep score like that.
Yes,
Suavero
apparently you are. You're agreeing with Suavero here.
All right.
Yeah, because if you don't take, here's a little tip about this show and all of the research and work that we do on this show. If you don't take a little time off, you'll turn into Kramer when he's hopped up on too much coffee, and you'll go a little crazy. So you need to have that time off.
Oh, don't I know it? I can't sit down at conversations with regular people anymore because I'll just sit down and be like, do you know the whole Navalny thing was bullshit? Like, I
Navalny,
can't.
he wasn't poisoned.
I can't talk about normal things.
People like Natalie, we just wanted to see if you wanted a pastry.
Yeah, like
right.
I need to do
You're
some.
those people at a party.
Yeah. Would you guys like some?
For a long time.
Would you guys like some tea or coffee? Do you know that Navalny wasn't poisoned with tea?
It's like, speaking of tea.
Oh my God! All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring
I'm
an
not invited
Agape
anywhere
crisp.
anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Greetings, Nina the Mystic. Nice to see you guys. So we are live. Good to see all of you guys. Thank you guys for subscribing. This is a free show. We hope we bring you value here every day when we do this show. We put a lot of hard work into it, and all we're doing is trying to seek the truth here, and wherever the truth may lead us. If we find out tomorrow that that Joe Biden is a saint and he literally walks on water, we will report that. We will bring you that information, but that hasn't happened yet. So we'll keep our eye out for that.
Sure.
All right, now to the big news. Let's get it started. Now to the fires in Maui. Is it one big land grab? That's the question today. Is it one big land grab? Is it part of a World Economic Forum plan to turn Maui into a 15-minute island or a series of islands using the 15-minute plan where you don't have to drive cars, use fossil fuels, just walk or bike to everything that you need, be fully run on electricity and solar power? Fully on renewable energy. We're going to stick to the facts, though, tonight, using publicly available data from the United States government and multiple publicly available sources so you can draw your own conclusions about what's going on in Maui. So on Sunday, President Biden spent hours relaxing on Rehoboth Beach. And when he left the beach, a Bloomberg reporter asked him for his thoughts on the amount of death and destruction in Hawaii. A Bloomberg reporter asked him this, and President Biden responded, "No comment." No comment. Like, literally, okay. Do you remember when George W. Bush was lambasted, and rightly so, for his disastrous Katrina response? And that photo was released showing him flying over New Orleans, famously. Like, he was at a fundraiser in California and flew over New Orleans, and they took a picture of him, like, looking out the window on his way back to Washington. Yeah, that didn't go so well for President Bush. It doesn't go so well when you're just relaxing on the beach in Rehoboth Beach, and when asked to comment on the greatest U.S. wildfire disaster in American history, in modern American history, you say no comment. Yeah,
or when Trump went to Puerto Rico and,
threw paper towels at people.
That also was not a great look. And so, we have to give equal criticism here, right? Like, you can make the point. He's on vacation, leave the guy alone. Right? We're not going to make that point.
No, presidents of the United States don't get to go on vacation. And even by the way, when they're on vacation, they have a mobile White House that's with them. Like, there's no vacation for the president of the United States. You sort of cash that chip in when you decided to run for president. Go ahead, David.
And at the very least, like, oh yeah, I don't know a lot about it, but my thoughts are with them. Something. But like, to say no comment, that's like the biggest blow off you could give them.
Yeah. Well, and at this point, it's Sunday. You know plenty about it, right? I mean, you've called in FEMA, allegedly. You've, issued disaster declarations, presumably, but you can't make a comment to a reporter about it? Okay. Anyway, let's not get off on that. But nevertheless, that's how this all started on Sunday. But he did manage, though, over the weekend to announce an additional $24 billion for Ukraine while on vacation. So leave the guy alone. He's sunning himself, but he still manages to get $24 billion out the door for Zelensky. But Maui, no comment. No comment on the over 100 Americans who have now died. And by the way, they're still having families submit DNA to the city because they don't know where a number of people are. So this number is presumably going to go up. We need your family's DNA because we can't identify people. We don't know where they are. And when we find bodies, we're going to have to try to, identify them in some way. No comment on the mysterious nature of these wildfires popping up in prime real estate areas just a short time before hurricane force winds arrive. No comment on that. No comment on why there are no tsunami sirens or evacuation alerts to get people out safely. The siren system works incredibly well across Maui. I've covered it for years where we would go live, back in my days on Fox News, we would go live to the island when there were any sorts of big storm warnings occurring on the island and information that needed to be gotten out to the people, even in the dark of night, those sirens would go off. Why were the sirens not used in this situation at all? No warnings, no alerts of any kind. Odd that it wasn't used in this particular neighborhood. Listen to NBC News ask the governor about this very story.
Earlier, I spoke with Hawaii's Governor Josh Green and began by asking him to respond to those complaints from residents who say there was no warning.
Yeah, the tragic nature of this fire, which was made worse by 80-mile-per-hour gusty winds from the remnant of Hurricane Dora, took out telecommunications, and they were fighting 3 other fires. That's what I've heard so far.
My understanding is a pretty robust siren system there, but it didn't work. Was there a human failure or equipment failure or a little of both?
It's too early for me to tell. Much of the equipment was destroyed with fire, and it's a very remote place. Of course, we would never diminish any kind of responsibility. We will leave it to HIEMA, which is our emergency management team, to help explain things going forward. Right now, we're doing all that we can to support the families who have lost loved ones and to make sure everyone has health care and soon housing because of the devastation. It is much like an atomic bomb hit Lahaina, which is a part of Maui, leaving utter devastation.
Very little, if anything, though, is coming from the federal government right now. This is not us saying this. This is the Washington Post reporting this. Very little, if anything, is coming from the federal government. FEMA, again, the Washington Post saying this. Here's the headline. The most emergency aid and resources are coming from local island residents, native islanders, providing resources and all sorts of information to be able to help this. Here's very little, if anything, coming from the federal government. Here's a quote from from the Washington Post. There's no government agency helping us, quoting a native islander. That is it. No government agency helping us. Okay.
Kind of a repeat of Puerto Rico.
Right. Yeah, and by the way, this isn't, again, this is the Washington Post saying this.
And NBC News.
And NBC News. And by the way, we'll get to ABC News here in a second. So these are not like far right-wing publications or anything like that. These are establishment mouthpieces of the Biden administration for all intents and purposes saying this.
It's interesting that he said the equipment was destroyed, the tsunami alert equipment, because, okay, we don't have a log of that somewhere. You never wrote down when was the last time this was tested. Right. You know, you have to have the actual speaker to know when you did it last. You would think that the way these things work in an organized society is like, yes, that happens every Sunday at noon or what have you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and we covered something a while back where, remember when there was like some kind of a alert went off and people got all these messages on their phone over there? There was like a terrorist attack or something like that. It was like a mistake. But like that means they're connected to their phones as well.
Yeah, a text message alert system. Yeah, exactly.
It was a missile strike, right, Philip?
Yeah. So we don't know how.
To me, though, it seems that, like a disaster warning system, if it's so centrally located that a single location taking damage can take it out, that is not a well thought out emergency system. It's got to be spread out all over you know what I mean? Like a single booth somewhere.
Yeah, right. But we're talking about it in the past tense. Like the equipment was destroyed. Right. But it's meant to warn people. Right. It's meant ahead of time to get the message out about evacuate your houses, evacuate because of high winds, evacuate because of storms, not afterwards.
Well, he's admitting it didn't work and we can't do any forensics on it because it's destroyed. Like I said, I know
it's like someone cut the phone lines.
I mean, don't you have one of those logs like at a 7-Eleven bathroom? Like when was this tested last? Come on.
If you've been in a 7-Eleven bathroom anytime recently, the last time it was checked was 2001. Many people are now rightly questioning the timing and location of these fires, though totally destroying the city of Lahaina, a city that, as you saw from the governors and the footage there that they just showed, totally destroyed. Now, this city is totally destroyed. And a city that has fought against development by wealthy outsiders for decades. And you don't need me to tell you this. It's easy to look up. It's easy to see. All you need to do is, in fact, you can speak to the families who've talked about not wanting to give up their homes and not wanting to be sold out and bought out by, resort developers. And so they've continued to keep their small businesses, their small family inns, their small restaurants, the cafes, the coffee shops. They've kept that. And the overwhelming number of people who live here have lived here for decades in this town. Some going back to the early 1900s in this town. And many people are questioning the timing of all of this. If you look at the demographics of this area, when you study Lahaina's demographics, you'll see a mostly Asian population with a large native islander population, many families refusing to sell their land to billionaire developers over the years. In fact, you can see the latest development projects that are already approved for Maui on Hawaii's government portal. So I spent quite a bit of time today going through Hawaii's history and approval of these projects. Here in green are the projects already set for approval. Those are already approved. Here in yellow are pending projects. And here in red are the proposed projects that haven't been approved. But you notice right there in the center of your screen, that's Lahaina. Notice how all of those developments, see all of those houses, all of that area is just like off limits. Because guess what? People live there. Well, not anymore, because now it's all been destroyed. So this area had basically been off limits to development because, native islanders and longtime residents refused to sell their homes. So who knows? Perhaps there's nothing nefarious going on here at all. But now this entire city has been totally destroyed. Lahaina is now destroyed. And according to ABC News, this is not, again, a right-wing publication, ABC News says this: Lahaina residents worry that a rebuilt Maui town could slip into the hands of affluent outsiders. So in a matter of days, it didn't take very long for ABC News to speak with locals about their big concern. This is something they've been fending off for years, and now it's a real concern because are people just going to up and move? They're going to sell off their land. They'll end up paying it to the highest bidder. Will insurance even cover it to rebuild? They've kept buying. They kept them from buying their land for decades in this area. So Maui County estimates that more than 80% of the more than 2,700 structures in the town were damaged or destroyed. 4,500 residents are newly in need of shelter. And according to the census data that I looked at, about 13,000 people live in Lahaina. So, and most of them are homeowners. Over close to 60% of them own their own homes in Lahaina. But oddly, reporters are being kept from the town and asking questions. Ashley Probst is the editor of the Maui Times. Her parents lost their home. They've lived in this home since the year 1911. Her childhood home was destroyed this week. She's being kept from doing her job as a reporter and editor of the Maui Times, trying to get answers from city and government officials as to how this fire unfolded and what do we do now to help get people the response and answers they need. Here's what she had to say.
This narrative that the media is lying about the reality of the Lahaina fire is incredibly frustrating for me because I am the media. I am the editor of Maui Times, and I have tried relentlessly to get direct information from the County of Maui as well as the Maui Police Department. Both entities have been radio silent and have not responded to any of my calls or emails over the past few days. I also spoke to Maui police officers in person in Lahaina, and they all denied me my First Amendment right to freedom of the press by denying me access to Lahaina town as well as denying me information. They even sent me on a wild goose chase trying to find their media coordinator who had conveniently gone home for the day by the time I found where he was supposed to be. So it is not the media who is lying to you because I am obligated to only report what has been confirmed. Who's lying to you is the government entities who are trying to cover their asses and not take accountability for how grossly mismanaged this entire situation has been. Maybe if we make this go viral, I'll actually get a response from them.
Good girl.
So, yeah, where will this land go? How will it be? And by the way, her family lost their whole family business. So they had an inn that they ran, totally destroyed. So she's a reporter from that town, knows it very, very well. So where will this land go? How will it be transformed? It's anyone's guess. But if you listen to the World Economic Forum and the new governor of Hawaii, Josh Green, they want to turn Hawaii into a poster child for green energy. I mean, this is like the World Economic Forum's wet dream. They love Hawaii. Hawaii has become a darling of the World Economic Forum. How Hawaii plans to be the first U.S. state to run entirely on clean energy. And of course, then they got their newly installed governor and the move away totally from fossil fuels all to a renewable electronic future. But also, not just electronics, artificial intelligence. So a big piece of Hawaii's plan, as Hawaii has publicly spoken about this, the governor has publicly spoken about this, is to basically run the entire island using artificial intelligence. So that artificial intelligence, I don't know, we don't know how deeply this goes, right? Elon Musk is warning us about the dangers of it. So when you have artificial intelligence basically monitoring and running everything on the island, keeping up with all of government services and its citizenry and everything that's happening there, do you guys trust AI to be your government? Did you elect AI to be your representatives? But I guess you are, because that's how it's going to be run.
The only way people can get on and off the island is fossil fuels. I mean, like, what are they going to do?
Right.
You're just trapped here.
Right. And it's amazing, right? People can't travel in this area right now. They're being blocked off and cordoned off, but tourists can still fly there. Like, you can still use fossil fuels to hop on a plane and fly to Hawaii. That's no problem. And the idea that we're ever going to be able to use some sort of renewable battery technology for airline flights is laughable. Absolutely laughable. So it'll be interesting. Here, Governor Green explains to the United Nations, he's been speaking about this and about Hawaii's plans for monitoring everything that will happen on Hawaii using artificial intelligence, although he doesn't quite use those words, but that's exactly what the plan is if you read the details. Watch.
In the old days, decades, generations, and even centuries ago, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people lived in Hawaii and had a sustainable culture for food. And that was something that we still recognize. To that end, we have done some things, and we hope to be able to share this much more in time. One is the Aloha Plus Challenge, which is a data-driven approach, which we can share with our states and with anyone who feels that it would be helpful to track the SDGs, to make sure that we embed them in all of our policies.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to embed every data-driven approach. We'll have the STGs, the ESGs, and all of the environmental protection plans in place, and we'll be monitoring it using artificial intelligence so that every business is compliant and everything is being tracked, and we know how these 15-minute cities unroll. So again, there's a lot of speculation as to what this will now mean for Lahaina and these other areas that were burned, or what Hawaii's future will look like as a result of this.
And can I just say something? Mm-hmm. My grandfather lived off the land. He was born in the Big Island. He had no shoes. He lived in a hut. His dad was killed in a train accident as a laborer. And that is that's a life he wanted to escape. It was an incredibly difficult life. He joined the service so that he could serve during World War II in order to leave Hawaii because it was such a hard life. So you're romanticizing this life that my grandfather had to work his butt off in order to leave because there's a really high fatality rate, low life expectancy. You have to work for every single calorie that you've got. Like he was begging for food in the sugar plantations where my Spanish family was working. Like, the idea that this guy's like, this was a great life, let's go back to that, is incredibly insulting to some people's histories, like mine included.
Well, yeah. And it's like, think about it. It's like, if they're going to roll it backwards, you're basically going to roll it back to like what, Japan, before they like allowed, you get to not allow any trade. Oh, you guys want computers? You want TVs? Sorry that we can't manufacture those in Hawaii because we can't get the stuff. We're just going to have to use what we have here. So, we can make certain things, but it's just going to be like walled garden.
Yeah. I mean, I get that we want to like romanticize this, but it was incredibly hard life, and there's certain things about being Hawaiian. They're like, oh, we were voyagers, we had connection to the spirit world, or whatever like you want to say about being Hawaiian, but like this is a life that people want to actually push themselves into prosperity and not have like barefoot children that could die of diseases.
I guess what got them there, fossil fuels, right? Trade, being able to bring things off island there. It was, enabled this island to prosper, right? Fossil fuels. And you want to get away from that. You want to totally get away from that and move towards, an energy policy that is literally crushing Europe right before your eyes. Just look at what's happening right now in Europe. This is a sort of a harbinger of things to come in this country. So here, Governor Green.
I was just going to say there's always blowback with stuff like that, because what they don't always ever take into consideration is if they're going to do all that stuff, they have to retrofit ships to deliver products on this other stuff for these carbon neutral or whatever the heck they're going to do. And the cost for everything for those people will skyrocket, and you're going to just completely crush the poor. The people that are living comfortably there wouldn't be able to do so.
Right. That's who always gets hurt by it, right? So here, Governor Green explains how Hawaii's green energy interests should be, that they've been really leading on this, and people need to pay attention of where Hawaii plans to go. Watch.
We tried to lead on energy and climate. We were the first state to mandate 100% renewable energy for electricity. So it's, again, an opportunity as a small state with technically a small footprint, but we do punch above our weight a little bit because of our position in the Pacific.
So is this a larger WEF plan to turn Hawaii into a WEF planned state with 15-minute cities? Are government officials purposefully keeping the media from reporting the true story here? Let us know your thoughts on this. We don't have all of the answers, but we're certainly presenting what we do know about these planned developments, what these government officials are planning, and what the response has been from the federal government here and the lack of federal assistance and local Native Islanders who are having to step up and actually provide and take care of their local people. So that's what's happening. We'll see what happens to Lahaina, though. Will it be rebuilt the same way? Or will developers be able to swoop in and buy up that land for pennies on the dollar?
And who are the insurers here? Are they going to be, making good on their policies? I'm always interested because a lot of times people have like named storm coverage, and I don't know what's customary to get in Hawaii. But a lot of insurance plans are like, you're only covered if it's a named storm. Well, does it count that it's winds from a storm? And what was the impetus of the fire? These are really important questions that will have real world implications in people's lives.
We've got more news to get to here on your Monday. We're going to talk about Hunter Biden and the switcheroo that's happening in the Hunter Biden prosecution and this sort of sweetheart deal that he thought he had, that maybe that's totally gone now. We'll look into that. Plus, we're going to look at this unbelievable story from the U.S. southern border. It's shocking. Michael Yon and Ann Vandersteel are going to be joining us from the border on this story. They've been tracking what's happening with the children in these concentration camps. Yes, I said it. Concentration camps at the U.S. border in the United States, in Texas. We will bring you that story coming up. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Crowd Health, because I'm sure you've seen it when you have friends who get an unexpected medical expense and then they have to take it to a GoFundMe or what have you. That's because, of course, health insurance is so broken in the United States. Premiums are increasing, deductibles are getting larger, claim denials are becoming more and more common. The headache of health insurance is exactly why Crowd Health was created. It's not health insurance, it's a better way to pay for healthcare through crowdfunding. And by crowdfunding, we don't mean you ask your friends for help on GoFundMe. It means you pay into a fund that you can tap into when you need it. Crowd Health gives their members the freedom to efficiently and affordably break free from the antiquated insurance system and into healthcare options that fit your need. They take care of you. The insurance companies don't give you this peace of mind. If you've ever submitted a claim, like I once did when I was on vacation, and my daughter got pink eye, and I had to submit a claim from a Mexican doctor. And you just hold on, hope that they don't say no. And you sort of feel like, did I do wrong taking my baby, my 7-month baby, to the doctor for pink eye? Because they slap you on the hand. That's why your $50 a month membership includes the tools and services you need to get the highest quality healthcare and put you in the driver's seat. You don't have to second guess your choices because you'll be covered. So it's time you opt out of restrictive health insurance plans and let Crowd Health help fit your healthcare needs. Get started today for just $50 per month and use our code REDACTED to get the healthcare you deserve. One more time, that's crowdhealth.com, and use our code REDACTED to get the healthcare you deserve. Crowd Health, again, is not insurance. Learn more at notcrowdhealth.com. Join crowdhealth.com. Let me just repeat that. Join crowdhealth.com and use our code REDACTED.
All right. We want to thank everyone for subscribing. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, we do this show live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Good to see everyone. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. Old Biker says another EV started a fire. You think an electric vehicle started a fire there? Wouldn't that be just totally ironic, right? Who's your daddy? Says LOL. Nice to see you. Penny Salmons. Kung Fu Toe. Kung Fu Toe. By the way, speaking of toes, I slammed my toe the other day when I was surfing. And it was like purple. So I had a Kung Fu toe.
It was like a rainbow of purple.
It was really bad.
And violet and indigo. Yeah, it was gnarly. But he had an X-ray.
Sounds beautiful.
It's not broken.
If you do subscribe, your name will pop up here on the big board. Yes, it will pop up here on the big board. And if you're watching us on Rumble or YouTube, thank you guys so much for being a part of our show.
All right, we're going to move on. So imagine, if you will, that you are Hunter Biden's lawyers and the Justice Department offered you this sweet deal on a long list of things that your client is basically going to get away with. And then all of a sudden that sweet deal is no longer on the table. Be like, what? I thought this was this is not a slam dunk, no?
He's like going, having a great weekend. He's like, wow, I got that one. Pulled that wool over their eyes.
Yeah, just as you thought you got away with it, right? That's what lawyers for Hunter Biden said in a filing on Sunday. Here's their response. It's actually, I'm going to show it to you in depth later because it's a little bit comical. They're kind of like, let me just paraphrase. They're like, dude, you offered us this, you offered to pay for dinner here. And now you're not? What? So they were due this response because the Justice Department filed a motion to dismiss the entire case against Hunter Biden. This is the one where he got a sweetheart deal. We're going to go over it in a second. So in a late Friday news dump, the Justice Department said, we're going to hire a special counsel. Oh, and dismiss this lawsuit because we got to go back to the drawing board, basically. So just to recap, Hunter Biden, he has so many smoking guns of bad things we can't even count. We know that the Justice Department was trying to shield information from his laptop on social media. We know that already. We know that his laptop showed that his father was supporting his lifestyle and at the same time benefiting from payouts from foreign actors, both Bidens. We know that the younger Biden paid for sex workers and drugs out of his business accounts. We know that from Congress. None of this conspiracy theory now. We can all, I think, agree on this. We know that President Biden lied about not being involved in those business accounts. I don't think anyone disputes those things. Biden supporters only just say, it's not so bad. Is that,
Well, no, what Biden supporters say and what the media has said is, oh, but he's got such a loving father.
Right.
Like that's been like this. They twist it like, but Biden's standing by his son. Like that's love. That's family love.
Okay.
Right?
He literally sold influence to, for political influence, that does not benefit it basically sold out the entire American population. Remember, I was just thinking about this today when they're like, is that so bad? Remember how the media freaked out about how Donald Trump was surcharging the government on golf carts and hotel rooms and his properties when he was president? I mean, that in and of itself was like a minor scandal that he was benefiting from the presidency personally by using his hotels for diplomatic meetings. And we all freaked out about that. You're not supposed to do that, right? But literally selling access to a politician, we have to think both of those things are not right. We have to have stronger rules about both of those things. Don't you agree? Clearly not. So the Justice Department knows about all of this. They offered him a plea deal with a fine and no jail time, and a judge in late July refused to sign off because it seemed to her that she was being asked to rubber stamp a deal that would preclude any further trouble for Hunter Biden, and she absolutely thought that smelled fishy. Here's what she said in that hearing on July 26th. She says, I'm not convinced that this actually is a plea under subsection B, which you all suggest is me rubber stamping the plea if it's a knowing plea. But even if it were, I have testimony under oath, both that the defendant is concerned about ensuring that he has immunity from additional charges, and also that, well, he doesn't need that in terms of the plea deal. So I need to think about it. So what she's saying here, and I read that kind of badly, I apologize, is that I can't sign off on him for future things. I can only sign off on this thing, what we're charging him with.
Right. Like you're asking me to sign off on future immunity
right.
from future crimes.
And she's like, that doesn't smell right.
What?
That's
Like he
not
gets
right.
like a blanket immunity?
Great.
I know. Like he's got some sort of blanket immunity. What the hell? Like
Yeah.
we're just going to, what I rule on now will future proof him in the, for things he does in the future.
Right. And, the Biden administration wanted this to just go away, pay the fine, tax deduction. Right?
Right.
Is the fine a tax deduction? I would assume it is. Yeah.
I guess so.
And so then, this is over for us. We can campaign. We can put it behind us. No more Hunter Biden laptop stories. So that's why on Friday, Attorney General Merrick Garland announced that there would be a special counsel. And the Justice Department then, while they're getting ready for that, asked the court to just disappear this whole Delaware case. Here's the filing. They said, can you please dismiss this with prejudice. Respectfully submits this motion to vacate the court's briefing and basically let's clean slate, dismiss the case, and then we will start all over with a special investigation. So now we have a special investigation. It bears asking this question. Why do we need all these special investigations? Shouldn't we have a full trust in an investigation as it goes forward, right? Now this is the third most, high profile one in about 5 years. So here is AG Garland announcing this on Friday.
In a July 2023 letter to Congress, Mr. Weiss said that he had not to that point requested special counsel designation. On Tuesday of this week, Mr. Weiss advised me that in his judgment, his investigation had reached a stage at which he should continue his work as a special counsel, and he asked to be so appointed. Upon considering his request, as well as the extraordinary circumstances relating to this matter, I have concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint him as special counsel. This appointment confirms my commitment to provide Mr. Weiss all the resources he requests. It also reaffirms that Mr. Weiss has the authority he needs to conduct a thorough investigation and to continue to take the steps he deems appropriate independently, based only on the facts and the law. Mr. Weiss will also continue to serve as U.S. Attorney for the District of Delaware. As special counsel, he will continue to have the authority and responsibility that he has previously exercised to oversee the investigation and decide where, when, and whether to file charges. The special counsel will not be subject to the day-to-day supervision of any official of the department, but he must comply with the regulations, procedures, and policies of the department. Consistent with the special counsel regulations, at the conclusion of Mr. Weiss's work, he will provide me with a report explaining the prosecution or declination decisions reached by him. As with each special counsel who has served since I have taken office, I am committed to making as much of his report public as possible, consistent with legal requirements and department policy. Today's announcement affords the prosecutors, agents, and analysts working on this matter the ability to proceed with their work expeditiously and to make decisions indisputably guided only by the facts and the law. The men and women undertaking this investigation are public servants who have dedicated their careers to protecting the citizens of this country. The appointment of Mr. Weiss reinforces for the American people the department's commitment to both independence and accountability in particularly sensitive matters. I am confident that Mr. Weiss will carry out his responsibility in an even-handed and urgent manner and in accordance with the highest traditions of this department. Thank you.
All right, so he took no questions and he, cut and ran right out of there on a Friday. Now, I want to just sort of highlight that he said that Attorney Weiss will decide when, where, and whether. Those are a lot of hypotheticals, right? And to charge Hunter Biden as if there are other places that might be better for this. There are other times, right? So these are things that you're like, is that more convenient for Hunter Biden or is it not? Which is it's a valid question. Now, they basically have to go back to the drawing board. This sounds like an okay idea, right? Because this plea deal, we should all agree, was a sweetheart deal. Now, maybe there'll be a real investigation with real charges. Maybe, but there are some weird things about it. First of all, why is this weird? Attorney General David Weiss asked to be the special counsel, even though he is already investigating Hunter Biden. This means he gets broader powers to look in more broader communications and coordination. But that's a bit like auditing your own taxes because he already has been investigating Hunter Biden. Second, according to the general powers of special counsel, a special counsel has to come from outside of the government so that there's no conflict, such as the one I just pointed out, because you shouldn't be looking into an investigation that you've already looked into. Here is the law from that code. It says a special counsel must be a lawyer with a reputation for integrity and impartial decision-making, and with appropriate experience to ensure both that the investigation will be conducted ably, expeditiously, and thoroughly, and that the investigative and prosecutorial decisions will be supported by an informed understanding of the criminal law and Department of Justice policies. So Bob Mueller and John Durham, they were both pulled out of private practice to conduct their special counsel investigations. So presumably AG Garland knows that special counsel has to be from outside. Why do we get one from inside?
It's a glaring oversight, right? I mean, it's right there, right in black and white. There's no ambiguity about it. They cannot be working in the government to take this job.
It's from the Code of Federal Regulations. Like, it's literally written there. So, that someone from outside takes a look at, like, it's an audit. Basically, it's an audit of an investigation. Now we have so many whistleblowers inside the IRS saying we were precluded from looking at certain things. We were shut down when we tried to look at certain things, and that it was not the head of the IRS that did it. The head of the IRS said this comes from outside, above my pay grade, right? So we know that somebody was doing something. Who was it? We absolutely should get an impartial look at this. Is this the right guy? Now, he's saying, Attorney White, that he needs to investigate how this Hunter Biden case has been investigated. But he never said that he was even done. So back in June, when the sweetheart deal was announced, he released this press release. And I know this is a crappy look at it, but it just says underneath, this investigation is ongoing. He never said this is the end of it, that plea deal. So we kind of had an inkling that he was going to keep going. And so it's just a bit confusing, right? Now, he knew there when he wrote this in June that there was more here. So the question just remains, did the government try to end this investigation with this plea deal or didn't it? In my opinion, which I know you didn't ask for, I think the two major special investigations that we've got in recent years over Russiagate and the Trump firing of James Comey, I think those both got it right. This one doesn't have an outside lead, though. So can we put our full faith in these, given that those two have, in my opinion, garnered trust in the Justice Department? But then this one has this major conflict. How are we supposed to feel? It's hard not to draw conclusions here. We're going to keep trying. I'm not drawing conclusions. I'm just asking questions. But interesting, again, is this response from Hunter Biden's lawyers to the government's request to dismiss the Delaware case. They're basically saying, like, look, you offered this deal, this sweetheart deal. We still want it. Here's their filing saying, first, we accepted this idea that we settle. Second, the settlement was proposed and dictated from prosecutors. So their fourth point is, like, we're still here to finish it off. We know the judge said we couldn't have this deal, but she said to work out a new one. We still want to stay at the table. We'd still like to take this deal, please, and just work it out in a way the judge will sign off on. I don't think they're going to have that chance. This deal will probably go up in smoke, and they will contend with a lot more heat through this new special investigation. So, we have two ways to feel about it. One, they didn't follow the rules on how to appoint a special investigator, and they're auditing themselves. But two, the previous two special investigations we got were fairly well done. So where it's a glass half empty type thing. Let me know how you feel about it in the comments below.
Indeed. Well, we've got a lot more news to get to here on your Monday. We're covering a lot of big stories. We just covered the big update on the Maui fires and what the federal response is there. I know some people, I just saw one person saying, how dare you guys take a vacation during this time? Well, everyone needs a vacation, and we are going to take one with our family. So, and this is a free show after all. So we do appreciate you joining us here, but it is important for people to take some time with their families. I know I get a little feisty about that, but I just I find that funny. So anyway,
Clayton literally this weekend had to sit me down and say, stop reading these kind of books. Like, you need to slow your roll. You're screaming about stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you need to read a fictional novel. And I was like, I can. So I have to take a break from this because I'm going a little loopy. And
everyone needs a break, but for someone to say, how dare you take a vacation? It's like, really? Okay.
Right.
Okay. Just to be clear, everyone needs a little bit of space from the amount of research that we do on the show. But anyway, at the end of the day, this show is free for you. We hope that you enjoy it. You don't have to spend anything on it. So we hope that we bring you value. All we ask is that you subscribe for free. If you subscribe or maybe smash that like button, that's all we ask. And you can push this out into the ether for us. Someone said Oliver Anthony for president. By the way, what an amazing story that guy is, right?
Oh, yeah.
We reached out to him to have him here on the show. We were hoping to be able to line that up for after when he's been busy, and we're trying to line it up. Anyway, I'd love to be able to have him on the show. That'd be amazing. An amazing story, and really like a voice of this time right now. Where so many people feel left behind by this government, right? Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I just saw that in the comments, like Oliver Anthony for president. So, and amazing. He had an amazing turnout yesterday, I think, for his concert.
Yeah, I think they said 25 acres of cars or something crazy like that. I may be off on the metric.
That's the power of social media and speaking the truth. So, yeah, amazing. Anyway, we've got more news to get to here. We're going to talk about the Dr. Fauci cashing in. How much money did Dr. Fauci make off of the pandemic? Will he answer those questions? Senator Rand Paul has some more questions about how much money he's actually made. Plus, President Zelensky of Ukraine has now decided to fire a huge swath of people in his government, citing corruption. And the stuff that these are his words, that he uncovered or they uncovered was absolutely outrageous, jaw-dropping, basically, and just vile. He apparently didn't know any of this corruption was happening. Interesting. We reported on it months ago, and the Wall Street Journal did as well. So surprising they're just finding out about that. Also, we're going to take you to the southern border and a big update there on these child concentration camps where these children being trucked across the border are being kept in the United States. We'll get there in a second. But first, are you an investor looking for an easier way to trade stocks? If you are, we'll tell you about that in a second. Oh, yeah, we'll tell you about it right now, actually. We'll tell you about it right now. If you're an investor looking for an easier way to trade stocks and you want 16 free stocks, all you need to do is go to redacted.inc/Moomoo and sign up today, and you can be trading like a pro with Moomoo in no time. It's our favorite trading platform, and I love it because I'm able to set alerts. I set the morning bell alert so I get a little update of the stocks that I'm following, the companies that I'm investing in, whether it's minerals companies, gold companies, silver companies, uranium companies, actual commodities companies, people that are pulling things out of the ground and helping us survive, fossil fuel companies, things like that. And I like to set alerts like that and be able to trade like a pro. Moomoo is an amazing stock trading platform that enables you to set all sorts of different alerts, but also they give you high-level access to pro items that you would normally pay for on other platforms like level 2 quotes and things like that. And with Moomoo, you don't. But the best part is you get 16 free stocks when you sign up and you open an account and you make your initial deposits in your account. And now they just rolled out Canada. They are now available in Canada. So all you need to do to get a bonus, you get a $100 bonus there in Canada if you sign up right now. Go to redacted.inc/Moomoo and get up to 16 free stocks, including a Google or a Tesla stock for free when you open the account, when you make your initial deposit. So our friends at Moomoo, just by going to redacted.inc/Moomoo. Someone in the chat says, invest in potatoes. Can you invest in potatoes? I mean, I guess you can. I guess you could invest in companies that pull
like
potatoes.
Futures, right?
Potatoes futures? Are there potatoes futures? I know like hog futures and things like that.
I don't know.
I've never heard of that before.
I don't know. Potatoes are a nightshade.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah, they are a nightshade. All right.
Did Dr. Fauci make money from drug companies during the pandemic while he was telling you to stay home, not go to work, figure out if you can collect money somehow? Wasn't his problem. He was just fine collecting royalties from drug companies. Now, Senator Rand Paul asked him about this just directly about a year ago during Senate hearings, and he brushed off the question as ridiculous and even said, yeah, you got your talking point. Remember this?
And from which companies? Over the period of time from 2010 to 2016, 27,000 royalty payments were paid to 1,800 NIH employees. We know that not because you told us, but because we forced you to tell us through the Freedom of Information Act. Over $193 million was given to these 1,800 employees. Can you tell me that you have not received a royalty from any entity that you ever oversaw the distribution of money in research grants?
Well, first of all, let's talk about royalty.
That's the question. No, that's the question. Have you ever received a royalty payment from a company that you later oversaw money going to that company?
You know, I don't know as a fact, but I doubt it.
Well, here's the thing is, why don't you let us know? Why don't you reveal how much you've gotten and from what entities? The NIH refuses. Look, we ask them. The NIH, we ask them whether or not, who got it and how much. They refuse to tell us. They sent it redacted. Here's what I want to know. It's not just about you. Everybody on the vaccine committee, have any of them ever received money from the people who make vaccines? Can you tell me that? Can you tell me if anybody on the vaccine approval committees ever received any money from people who make the vaccines?
Soundbite number one, are you going to let me answer a question? Okay, so let me give you some information. First of all, according to the regulations, people who receive royalties are not required to divulge them even on their financial statement, according to the Bayh-Dole Act. So let me give you some example. From 2015 to 2020, the only royalties I have was my last.
Okay. So we do now have some accounting, but I think that we can get upset about Fauci. We can do that later because that's always fun. We'll just do it together as an exercise in getting our cathartic expression. But the problem here is that NIH employees are allowed to continue to receive royalties from patents and pieces of ingredients and medications that they had a hand in, and then they can promote to everybody. This is a bigger problem of what's called pharmacracy, is just that the entire system is developed for profit in order to push medication on us, right? But about the pandemic, well, it does turn out that Fauci was cashing in on royalties from drug makers. And so were a lot of NIH employees, 2,400 to be exact. Now, we're not saying that they were specifically cashing in on the COVID vaccine, but we don't know whether or not they then looked at certain, recipes or treatments for COVID and said, that one would be good, and then I'd catch a royalty on that. We don't know. We know the U.S. government, in fact, did cash in because they licensed patents to Moderna and Pfizer and the other COVID vaccine makers. But we're talking now about which doctors were accepting royalties. It hardly seems fair. Now we know this because a watchdog group called Open the Books made a Freedom of Information request asking for employment contracts, financial conflicts of interest, and confidentiality disclosure documents, plus a job description for Dr. Fauci, as well as royalties paid to NIH employees by outside entities. This was requested. They denied it, the Department of Health, and so they took them to court and filed a lawsuit in 2022. Now, ultimately, we have it. So again, these are basic questions for Dr. Fauci, who was the lead of the pandemic. Do you make money pushing any medication, not just the vaccine? So here's a classic. This is, again, a classic example of what the legal principle is cui bono, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to ask. Who is benefiting from this thing being pushed onto a population, right? It's just who benefits, cui bono. Who is benefiting here?
That's a funny word.
You like it?
I like it. I bet our kids would like that, cui bono.
I mean, it's like literally criminal.
I know. If I said it to my kids, they'd just start laughing.
It's criminal investigation 101.
Yeah.
You're like, who benefits from this?
Right.
Who's cashing in? Who is taking the money? Right.
Right.
This is fundamental question here. And it should be asked for every drug on the market, every treatment being pushed. Certain drugs were not pushed because of the antithesis of cui bono. Drugs we still cannot mention on certain platform. If you catch my drift. Do you catch my drift?
Say that again?
Never mind.
I catch it.
Okay, thank you. David caught it.
Cui bono.
So it wasn't just people, so cui bono, well, it wasn't the people who lost their jobs for vaccine mandates. They didn't bono, right? Definitely not those people. So now to the documents. Here is the list. This organization, openthebooks.com, put them in spreadsheet form. And then what I did was just sort it by name. So I have all the ones for Fauci in one place. They asked what he had received during his time at the NIH. So you see the list goes from 2010 to 2021. Now, most of these are not directly related to the COVID vaccine. So we should be clear about that. It wasn't that he was getting royalties from that vaccine. It was just that he and other government employees were making decisions about public health recommendations while being compromised by public health. And the companies that were paying these royalties come from all over the world: China, Russia, Belarus, many US-based companies too. They get the royalties on medicines and components that are then used in the marketplace. They are financially motivated to make certain decisions because they bono, right? We covered this. You can't really hate Fauci here. You can't, don't hate the player. You should hate the game. Absolutely, I don't like this game. But the idea that Fauci wasn't benefiting, though, from the COVID vaccine is not necessarily true either. He was the highest paid federal government employee with a salary of $480,000 per year. So why does somebody make a big salary like that? Well, because they're expected to make their organization a lot of money. They're supposed to be valuable, right? Even if Fauci didn't personally profit from the COVID vaccine, he saw to it that the NIH did, and the United States government, because we learned back in February that Moderna will be paying the NIH $400 million for use of patents in the COVID vaccine, plus ongoing payments. Pfizer already made a big payout to the government for use of these patents that were done used in the COVID vaccine, and ongoing payments. So Fauci did, in fact, make the government a lot of money by pushing these vaccines. Absolutely, he did, and earned that almost $500,000 a year salary. So the NIH is still making a lot of money on these COVID vaccines. We know that Moderna and Pfizer will continue to pay them for use of this patent. So just keep that in mind as we see COVID vaccine information ramp up as we go into the school year and then flu season.
Just remember who's making money.
Just remember, cui bono.
Cui bono. Always remember cui bono.
Yeah.
We're going to get a T-shirt for Redacted, cui bono.
You guys are so silly with that
Not to be
word.
confused with a Cubano, right. Which is the sandwich.
Oh, a Cubano is a sandwich. Okay.
Or boner from Growing Pains. Different person.
I didn't think you were going to go there. Yeah. Or boner. Okay. Don't get your cui bono and your boner mixed up.
And Bono from YouTube.
Right. Bono from YouTube.
YouTube.
Your cui bono. Your cui boner.
He's on YouTube. So.
Ooh, boner?
Cui boner.
Oh.
No. Cui boner, cui bono.
Bono.
We've got more news to get to here on the show. Indeed, we do. We are going to talk about Zelensky firing these recruiters. Remember all those people, the men, the boys, like the 15-year-olds that are just picked up off the street and thrown into recruitment centers, or basically the conscription agents come along and grab you off the street in Ukraine and throw you into the meat grinder. Remember all of that, because those individuals who are in charge of all of that are now in some hot water. We're going to talk about that coming up. And we're also going to talk about what are you doing?
My coaster's gone.
Oh, like looking around, you're making me nervous. You're like, I'm trying to talk here, and you're like doing some weird, if you had cui bono. Do you need something? I don't have.
There's a lot of condensation on this. I can't put it down on this table.
If you've got condensation,
I have respect for wood.
Make sure you use a cui bono when you put that down on the. All right. And we're also going to talk about what's going on at the southern border as well. And someone in the chat said, where were you guys last Thursday? Right here. We did a show last Thursday. We were right here. We were right here. Where were you? We were right here in the studio. Yes. Yes, exactly. We right here in the studio. So we got more news to get to here on the show. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Indeed, because the thing about running your business is that every single hire counts, especially if you're a small business like we are here at Redacted. We couldn't just hire any old person. We need to make sure that our team is coherent and cohesive.
And they know what cui bono means.
And that we're nice to each other. Right. That you get my movie quotes. You know, if I were posting a job ad, I would put them all in like cryptic movie quotes, and whoever got them, they'd be like, yes.
Be like 80s movie quotes, 90s movie quotes.
We get nobody.
Your qualifications would be further down on the list, but if you could nail what someone said in a Goonies movie.
Yeah, then you're in. Okay, don't use this as a way to attract good talent. Use Indeed and let them help you attract, interview, and hire all in one place. They have a lot of tips for doing this better than the way that I just suggested. Although if you throw in a little, movie quote here and there, I'm sure that never hurt anybody. It is your density. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. You can find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessment, and virtual interviews. And if you hate waiting, then Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Indeed knows hiring needs to be cost-effective when you're running your own business, and they know that when you're doing everything for your company, you can't afford to overspend on hiring. So visit Indeed.com/redacted to start hiring right now. Again, just go to Indeed.com/redacted. Indeed.com/redacted. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. If you need to hire, you need Indeed.
All right. Someone in the chat and on Rumble says, cornball. You guys are cornball hosts, but in a nice way. Thank you so much. Density. Someone got your density. You have to have a full density to understand that joke.
Like it.
Yes.
I'm really obsessed with this coaster thing. If you guys don't know, the day we come back, it will be my birthday. I am a Virgo. I absolutely have to have a coaster.
Oh, I don't know what to tell you.
I was using a napkin, but it got all wet, and now
I can't help you here.
Okay.
But we have a show to do, so I don't have any coasters in my pants.
I don't even have.
Anybody have any coasters you can lend Natalie? Stat.
I'm gonna use this cloth, but it's
just use a
wet.
cloth. That's okay.
I always use floppy disks. I have one here if you need it.
Floppy disk.
Pass it through I have really good internet speed, so.
I have DVDs. Yeah, you have any DVDs? I find that those work really well.
Can I use one of those Star Trek books behind you?
Get out of here! Don't touch my Star Trek books.
Do you have any classic game cartridges you could just let her sit in?
You have one of my? Yeah, just go grab my copy of Dragon Warrior from 1985.
Who
in my
would
office.
take my coaster?
I don't know.
Is
All right.
Punk?
Yeah, let's get back to the news, shall we? Someone said Natalie's losing it. Yes, that's true.
For sure. I admitted that already.
Yeah, Dirty Dog said Natalie's losing it. That happened years ago, Dirty Dog. All right, let's get back to the news. Well, President Biden, if you haven't been paying attention, just approved another $24 billion for Ukraine because they need it. But where is all that money going, you may ask? Don't ask that question, because the government sure as hell isn't. It's going, though, into the pockets of corrupt... Yeah, don't ask that question. But it is going into the pockets of Ukrainian government officials, corrupt Ukrainian government officials, by the way. Cranium...
Nope, that wasn't right.
Corrupt Ukrainian government officials. Cranium... Yeah, anyway, they're corrupt. And it's going in their pockets. So I'll just take out that word in between and make it easier on myself. Put a pin in that for a second. Back in March, though, we showed you how Ukraine was dragging men off the streets and throwing them into the front lines. And of course, at the time, this was touted by Ukrainians saying, "Hey, no, this is Kremlin propaganda. Like this is Kremlin propaganda. What you're seeing here, this isn't really happening. Don't listen to what Moscow is telling you. Don't listen to independent journalists who are covering the story and actually reporting what's happening to these men who are being rounded up at cafes. And if they are of military fighting age, or even if they're not, doesn't matter. They're going to be thrown into the meat grinder. Even mentally handicapped individuals, people with disabilities. One man we featured here on the show who literally has a degenerative spinal condition, can barely even walk. Here's a mom. Remember this scene where this mom is like, no, please get out of my car. I'm not letting you take my son. Her son is in the car sitting in the back seat. And the mom is like, no, please, you're not getting him out of the car. And the police officers show up and say, sir, what are you doing here? This is our jurisdiction. We're the police. You members of the military have no right to be taking these men. Excuse me, sir, get out of here. So this is well reported. We covered this pretty deeply here on the show. Many of these men had physical disabilities. And basically, we also discussed how Ukrainians were bribing recruitment officials to avoid being dragged away. Again, it wasn't just our reporting. I mean, this was Wall Street Journal reporting. Here's the Wall Street Journal. Officials last week denied that Ukraine denied this, that untrained mobilized troops were being sent to battle unprepared, though they said the length of military training has been squeezed into a shorter period of time due to the war. That's Kremlin propaganda. Continues to spread fakes and myths. Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar said in a Telegram post. Several soldiers interviewed by the Wall Street Journal near Bakhmut last week said they had been sent to battle within days of being called up. Others said they've received several weeks of training. And then, of course, the Wall Street Journal went on to explain more of the corruption and the payments and the bribes. But that's Kremlin propaganda. Okay, remember that. That's Kremlin propaganda, according to Ukraine. Well, it turns out, I guess the Kremlin propagandists were correct, because it wasn't Kremlin propaganda at all. Ukraine just confirmed it themselves. According to Barron's, Zelensky fires the head of military enlistment in all Ukrainian regions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday dismissed officials responsible for military conscription in every region of the country, citing corruption allegations that he said could amount to treason. We are dismissing all. They're not just one. All of them are corrupt. We're dismissing all of the military commissars. The system should be run by people who know exactly what war is and why cynicism and bribery at a time of war is high treason. Kyiv has been conscripting Ukrainians for assault battalions for its counteroffensive against Russian forces to recapture territory controlled by Moscow's troops. Turns out that billions of dollars have gone into the pockets of corrupt government officials. You know, the ones responsible for the men being dragged off the streets, thrown into the meat grinder on the front lines.
Put that back up. It says that last screen.
From Barron's?
Yeah. The move reflects Ukraine's efforts to clamp down on graft. What did they mean by that?
Like the amount of money being taken, bribes. I mean, being taken, paying people off. Like you're paying off these officials, right? I mean, that's how I read it, right? I mean, yeah.
Isn't that like
Did they mean
grift?
grift?
Yeah,
Maybe
that's the wrong word, right?
Is graft?
Graft is not.
Isn't the past tense of grift? I don't know. But anyway, I guess look it up.
I did look it up, and I
Okay.
don't see a definition that would fit in there. But
All right.
okay, I'm sorry to derail. I just wondered what that was, and yeah, they should stop that.
It's an intent improperly to influence official action need not be alleged or proved, as it must be in bribery. Graft involves compensation for service performed in an official manner.
Didn't know that word.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Anyway, it turns out billions of dollars have been grafted
Got it.
into the pockets of corrupt Ukrainian government officials. Cui bono? The ones responsible for dragging men off the streets, throwing them into the meat grinder, the front lines. 33 government recruitment officials were fired. 33 of them in all of the conscription territories. 113 crimes were charged. 113 crimes. That's more than Hunter Biden. On Friday, Zelensky...
100 more to be exact.
Yeah, 100 more than Hunter Biden. 100 more, if you're keeping track at home. On Friday, Zelensky explained that...
110 more. Sorry.
Okay.
113.
On Friday, Zelensky explained that the investigation resulted in 33 officials overseeing conscription being charged with these 113 crimes. He said during the inspection of the territorial recruitment centers, law enforcement officials exposed cases of corruption, in particular during the general mobilization, he said, which poses a threat to Ukraine's national security and undermines confidence in state institutions. Is there confidence in Ukraine's state institutions? Well, it'd be interesting to see what the Ukrainian people and how they feel about their own government, state institutions. Do they have confidence in it? Because apparently this is being undermined.
I mean, that's so nice, except that new conscription laws say that you can literally go into people's apartment buildings and ask the property management who lives here and go and find them. So,
well, even under the DIA app, we've covered the DIA app that is now rolled out digitally. So every Ukrainian has access to this app, this application, which rules their life, tracking everything, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the United States behind it, and US aid and everything, pushing this massive app to make sure everything is tracked in Ukraine. And in the DIA app, of course, you can snitch on your neighbors. You can rat them out. There's a feature that they openly promoted, and we featured here on the show, where you can literally say that you believe your neighbor is a Russian sympathizer. Like, John, he didn't pick up his trash in the yard. I'm going to label him a Russian sympathizer and watch the security forces swoop into his house. You can literally do that in Ukraine. Now Zelensky is taking matters into his own hands, though, and pretending to be outraged. I love this faux outrage. It's like a good actor, right? They conducted this investigation. We didn't know this was happening. We conducted this investigation. We're rooting out corruption here. The investigation is revealing numerous abuses, he says, and they're frankly revolting. He is pissed. Listen.
I wish you health, fellow Ukrainians. I have just held a meeting of the National Security and Defense Council, a special one. The key issue was the results of the inspection of the military commissars. Reports were delivered by the State Bureau of Investigation, the Security Service of Ukraine, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Prosecutor General, the National Agency on Corruption Prevention, and the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, comprehensively. In total, there are already 112 criminal proceedings against officials of the territorial recruitment centers. 33 suspects, regional, city, and district military commissars, employees of the military medical commissions, other officials, abuses in different regions, Donetsk, Poltava, Vinnytsia, Odessa, Kyiv, Lviv. Some took cash, some took cryptocurrency. That's the only difference. The cynicism is the same everywhere. Illicit enrichment, legalization of illegally obtained funds, illegal benefit, illegal transportation of persons liable for military service across the border. Our decisions are the following. We are dismissing all regional military commissars. This system should be run by people who know exactly what war is and why cynicism and bribery in times of war constitute treason. Instead, warriors who have gone through the front line or who cannot be in the trenches because they have lost their health, lost their limbs, but have retained their dignity and have no cynicism are the ones who can be entrusted with this system of recruitment. This decision is to be implemented by Commander-in-Chief Zaluzhny. The new heads of territorial recruitment centers will be vetted by the Security Service of Ukraine before their appointment. Every military commissar against whom there is a criminal investigation will be held to account. Absolutely fair, in full. If the dismissed military commissars and other officials wearing shoulder marks against whom no evidence of crimes or violations has been found want to keep their shoulder marks and prove their dignity, they should go to the war front. However, I emphasize that the Army is not and will never be a substitute for criminal punishment. Officials who confuse their shoulder marks with profits will definitely stand trial. The issue of the military medical commissions. Now, this system is not working decently.
And he goes on to talk about that. So they're really going to root out this corruption. And, we're going to make sure we're going to vet the people who are in charge of all of these different regional offices. Basically implies that we didn't vet them the first time. So all of these people, every one of them, he says, was stealing American money. All of them. The millions, the billions that we've sent to them, flowing right into the pockets of these people. And we reported it here, and the Wall Street Journal reported it, and others have reported it, and it was considered Kremlin propaganda. Was it Kremlin propaganda back months ago when they also fired a huge swath of his inner circle for corruption? Oh, we got rid of all of them. It's all clean now. Oh, you did? Okay. So then months later, now you get rid of another 33 and file 112 to 113 criminal charges against them for stealing American money, flowing right into their pockets. But even beyond the money, forget the money for a second, because America just prints and makes up fake money anyway. Think about the men that are being rounded up and thrown into this meat grinder. And certain people can get paid off, so they don't have to go. But people who don't have the means, these poor Ukrainian boys who don't have the means, who are just being grabbed, thrown in, or some men who were, studying at university, being taken right out of their college classes and being thrown into the meat grinder and dying, being killed. I mean, the army is basically destroyed. So this is a death sentence. This is a death sentence. And what is it? It's amazing to me to see these men, these conscriptors who are going around grabbing these people who aren't then going to the front lines. It's like they get a free pass, because they probably are paid off in some way with these guys. All of them are corrupt. So they get the cushy job of being the conscription people that can go into Kyiv and go into these bars and nightclubs and cafes and grab these men and throw them in to fight this NATO war. That's at the heart of this. And it's just absolutely disgusting. But don't worry, we've rooted out the corruption now in Ukraine. I just find the timing of all of this very, very weird, don't you? I mean, 24 billion goes there. Like, what's happening? Why suddenly are we hearing about this? They've been annihilated on the battlefield. Like, is this some sort of a provision from NATO? Like, hey, we need you guys to clean this up because the word has gotten out. The Wall Street Journal is reporting on this. The New York Times has even covered this corruption. When it's in the New York Times, then we got to do something about it, guys.
Yes, but, corruption is not a new thing in Ukraine. In fact, the IMF in 2014, when the war on the Donbass began, the IMF started warning them, you better knock this off. You're spending $1 million a day to bomb these people. Stop it, because it's affecting your ability to pay back. We don't want to fund a war. And they warned about it for 6 years. And then in 2021, they finally just said, we can't offer you any more loans. And then, next year, they get all this money because the whole world's willing to give money to Ukraine now that the IMF is no longer. Interesting timing, right?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And, an entire generation of young men just killed because of this corruption in this phony proxy war. Anyway, let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. We've got more news to get to. We're going to take you to the front lines in the southern border with Michael Yon and Ann Vandersteel, who are doing amazing reporting about an unbelievable story about children in concentration camps. And we're really working on this story right now with Michael and Ann as they develop these sources and information about these children being kept in the United States against their will in these concentration camps where the Biden administration is basically ignoring it, pretending it doesn't exist. Governor Greg Abbott in Texas basically ignoring it and not even admitting that they exist. So we're going to bring you to Texas in just a moment for this awful, awful story.
All right, but first we want to tell you about our friends over at COVIDTaxRelief.org because they got a small retail business almost $80,000. COVIDTaxRelief.org got a manufacturing business nearly $250,000, and COVIDTaxRelief.org got a large distribution business almost $900,000. If you run a business, church, or nonprofit and paid your employees all throughout or part of the pandemic, you could qualify for up to $26,000 per employee through the Government CARES Act. But beware of clickbait or pay upfront companies who make you do the work and then take a huge percentage of your refund. COVIDTaxRelief.org receives a low, reasonable commission only after you receive your refund. So it's worth looking into. And with 300 CPAs and tax experts, no one is better at getting you the maximum benefit than COVIDTaxRelief.org. So visit COVIDTaxRelief.org right now because this plan expires soon. That's COVIDTaxRelief.org. COVIDTaxRelief.org. Refund examples are not a guarantee, and not all businesses apply or qualify, so check them out for yourself. COVIDTaxRelief.org.
Well, now to some breaking news from the southern border and the child trafficking story that we've been covering here extensively on the show. Illegal immigrant children being kept in concentration camps in America. This is a phrase that I never thought would come out of my mouth. That's right. These children with no parents, not allowed to go outside. All of this happening while the Biden administration, the Governor Greg Abbott administration, ignoring the situation. Our next guest spoke to a whistleblower at a secret child concentration camp facility in Texas and joins us now. Welcome back to journalist Michael Yon and Ann Vandersteel, host of Right Now with Ann Vandersteel. And Ann, welcome to the show for the first time. Good to see both of you.
Thank you, Clayton.
Thank you, Clayton. The things that we've been seeing are over the top. For instance, 2 nights ago, Ann and I and the rest of our team were out with a whistleblower who used to work in these facilities, and he also served as an escort. So they actually take these children and fly them around the United States, such as to New York and many to Florida. And often, interestingly, many of the escorts are 19, 20, 21 years old, and they're staying with children up to 5, even 10 children. When it's 5 children, it's often just one escort, like a young man with teenage girls or boys, that sort of thing. And sometimes they stay overnight in hotels together when their flights are delayed or whatever. And often they're delivering these to home, these children of mixed race. So it's not like somebody, it's like, it'll be boys and girls sometimes from different countries that are being delivered to affluent homes in places like Florida. And so this is very interesting. We're all over this. We're looking into it deeply. In fact, we're going to head to Florida soon and look more deeply into it. But Ann saw a lot of things that I didn't see as well.
The part that was so...
Yeah, tell me what you saw while you've been over the past few days at a Walmart facility speaking with these whistleblowers. We have images here and videos that you guys have sent. There's sort of a checkpoint. You pull up to an old Walmart and there's a checkpoint to even get onto the premises. Just tell me what you saw, Ann.
Well, what's so frankly deeply disturbing on all of this is the fact that you have corporations like Walmart that are now turning their closed facilities. Remember, we lost a lot of businesses during COVID, and most of the ones that survived were the Walmarts and the Home Depots. But in fact, Walmarts did close all over the country, and they're being rehabbed into these facilities that house up to 5,000 migrant children in one building. So you can imagine the conditions where they're not even allowed outside, and you have the parking lot cordoned off right there in the open where other businesses and retail pads are still open, and people know what's going on in the community. They're aware that they're holding all these migrant children. You have security that when you pull up and you pull out cameras, walkie-talkies and security guards appear everywhere and start to surround you to make sure you're not videotaping these facilities, which are right out in the open. Southwest Key Programs is one of the non-governmental organizations that I've been tracking for about 3 years now. And they are known to not only be paid publicly by the government, hundreds of millions of dollars per year, but they're also taking that money and financing the coyote cartels to smuggle these children in. And they prefer the younger the better because they get more money per child the younger the child is. They're also funding the lobbyists, which are then, of course, greasing the politicians to encourage the policies and laws that are delivering the open border nightmare that we are witnessing today. It's changing the face of our country. It's burdening the taxpayer. Crime is through the roof. And frankly, Governor Abbott shut the border during COVID, Clayton. He could shut the border right now. Instead, he's visiting with the mayor of McAllen, Texas, having big, summits down here in McAllen, Texas, congratulating McAllen for their tax revenue growth in the retail sector, and they're encouraging paving over agriculture so that they can expand the international bridge into Mexico and bring in the fruits and vegetables from Mexico over and above the Made in USA label. So all of this World Economic Forum agenda is playing out right here on the southern border, and Texas is going to lose their electoral college if this progression changes. But again, frankly, it's at the expense of the children, which is the real profit center for these NGOs and frankly for the federal government becoming the largest human trafficking purveyors in the world.
I know when we say that, right, we say the United States government is the largest purveyor of human trafficking in the world. We certainly know the accusations leveled against the CIA as being actively involved in this. And here you have these facilities hosting 5,000 children in old Walmarts with guards and guard gates. I'm looking at this Welcome to the South Key Programs guard gate that when you pull up, they're watching you. This is unbelievable that this is happening in America. What is the response from the Biden administration when you bring this to, Secretary Mayorkas or any other member of the Biden administration?
I'm glad you brought up Secretary Mayorkas, Clayton, because a team of researchers has done a deep dive led by an attorney, Todd Callender, who's actually got a case in front of the 10th Circuit, taking it to the Supreme Court, questioning the validity of these vaccines and what it does to your sovereignty based on the 13th Amendment. Setting that aside, this team has uncovered the fact that Secretary Mayorkas and every member of the Biden administration, including Kamala Harris, including federal judges, including U.S. Attorney Matthew Graves, all have deficient, defective, or non-existent oaths of office on file. What do I mean by that? When you swear to uphold and defend the Constitution, you have to do two-part process. One is 5 U.S.C. 3331, where you put your hand on the Bible and raise your right hand and swear to uphold the Constitution. And part 2 is 5 U.S.C. 3332, where it must be presented in a written format, notarized, and kept on file within 30 days of taking public office. These people are deficient, defective, or non-existent when it comes to that second part of the oath, which then begs the question, to whom do they really have an allegiance? Are they even up for treason based on the activities they're engaging with this open border policy? And of course, just the abuse of these children is unfathomable what's going on right now.
Yeah, treason. That's a great point, Ann. Michael, when you talk about what's happening with these children and the travesty that's unfolding, you talked about where these children are being shipped to. They're being housed here. What is the facility then that's moving these children from these abandoned Walmarts to homes in New York and across the country? Who's doing this?
Well, for instance, a whistleblower who would probably go on your show, actually, we can ask him today. He was one of the escorts for several years. His name is Carlos, and I think he would, actually. And he was one of the escorts. They'll take him to McAllen Airport, which is just down the road from us here, or Harlingen Airport here in Texas, and they would fly them to like Jacksonville or Orlando Airport, as an example. And then they rent a car. Well, if their flights get delayed somewhere in between, they would get a hotel with no oversight whatsoever, staying in the same room. He was instructed they were to stay on the couch and the children would stay in the bed, up to 5 children. It could be up to 10, but in those cases, they would have 2 escorts. And at times, they would actually lose children at times, like gone. And nobody knows what happened to them. Oh, yeah. And then so they deliver them to homes, right? They deliver them to homes in affluent areas. I ask, and Ann and I ask, we must have interviewed him for 10 hours between the 2 days, right? And we said, do they deliver them to RV parks or to boat ramps or to trailer parks or what? And he said affluent homes. It was always affluent homes. Sometimes when they delivered, sometimes the sponsors or whatever they are, we don't know how that works, would pick them up at baggage claim at airports. Sometimes they would not show up at all. And the company warned the escorts never to bring the children back. It doesn't matter if the recipients of the children are drunk or high or angry. And many times Carlos would tell us that the children were fearful. They wanted to go back to their home countries and back to their parents, which begs the question, how did you get here? Of course, which we see in Darien Gap, and we see when I'm down in Mexico, we see children who clear. Ann and I saw on the border, 3 days ago, children, you're a mother, seeing children, the body language just didn't match with, I should let you talk on that.
Yeah, no, when you see young men, young adult males, chaperoning children by having their hands on the backs of their shoulders and steering the child into the bus that Customs and Border Protection has waiting for them, as facilitated by another company, ISS Action, partnering with Catholic Charities, which, by the way, is all over this down here in McAllen. We visited that facility, and we saw Customs and Border Protection agents really bro-hugging, glad-handing, high-fiving each other as the, quotes, merchandise, which is the illegals, mostly women and small children, are lined up against the wall waiting to go inside to the Catholic Charities facility, which, by the way, encompasses a whole city square block on downtown McAllen, and that's right across from a bus station where they then move the people across the street, put them on buses. And as you know, Abbott is pushing these people all over the country. But Clayton, it gets even more concerning because we have multi-drug resistant tuberculosis coming in with this migrant flow, and that multi-drug resistant tuberculosis is zoonotic, and it jumps from people to animal and animal to people. So cows by the thousands, tens of thousands, are being slaughtered in Texas because migrant workers working on dairy farms or cattle farms are spreading tuberculosis to these cattle, which immediately have to be exterminated. You cannot have that. So Texas, and right now, Clayton, is at risk of losing its TB-free status, which is going to impact our food supply. And my beef supplier, that is the sponsor for my show, is warning me, Ann, beef prices are going to skyrocket 30% in October. And we see this because the dairy and the beef cattle industry is being decimated by TB all over the country with these migrants. So we have a 5th generation warfare that is being implemented thanks to the World Economic Forum's puppets like Joe Biden and Greg Abbott, which are allowing this to continue. And it just simply can be stopped if they shut the border, and they're not doing it.
Yeah, it's all part of the plan. This is all part of the WEF plan, right? To eliminate our dependency on meat or our eating of meat and move to this meatless future that they want. And they can do it under this hidden cloud of tuberculosis, I suppose. I want to get, you guys can both answer this question, or you can help me navigate this. And you've been investigating this Southwest Key programs for 3 years now. If I'm a wealthy person in Florida, a friend of Jeffrey Epstein or something, and I want one of these children, what is the mechanism by which I submit a request? Do I get it? What I'm getting at is there's got to be a paper trail here, right? Someone submits a request, They say, I'd like a child, I'd like a woman shipped to me. It comes into this facility. Carlos or other carriers deliver this child to my front door. I mean, how does this happen?
So that's an excellent question. In fact, we're looking into that right now because the way the organization, the NGOs are set up, you have somewhere between 5 and 10 critical people at the very top that own the organization, whether it's SLS, MBM, Southwest Key Properties, or any of the other big 10 NGOs that are in the country that are hosting tens of thousands of children, or actually hundreds of thousands of children countrywide. But they subcontract every aspect of managing these migrants, whether it's food, they have a subcontractor, medical support, educational support, housing support. They have different organizations underneath them. This gives them that arm's length, safety between anything that can go wrong down in the field. So when it comes to the paper trail of how does a child get tracked from Southwest Key Properties into, say, somebody's house, is it an Epstein connection? That is what we're trying to figure out right now, which is why working with Carlos is critical. He has, believe it or not, and this is a saving grace, this is why this whistleblower is so explosive and why it's going to be so critical to unpacking all this and shutting it all down and forcing Congress to defund these NGOs and to put pressure on to close them countrywide. Every single Walmart and whatever they're being housed in needs to be shut down. He has the names of children from flight logs where he took them. He has the names of children where he's been told, go to this address in Florida and deliver the child in Florida or upstate New York. 2 areas that were sort of the hotbeds for where these children, and again, you look at Florida, New York, where did Epstein have a lot of connections? Florida, New York. Where did NXIVM have a lot of connections? Florida, New York. So it's the same pattern, it's the same people. It's just a matter of now finding the next whistleblower that's connected to one of these sub-NGOs that will show us that paper trail, because we aren't there yet. We have delivery to a receiving, quote, sponsor, but we don't have how that request came in. Rest assured, Clayton, we're going to get that because we're getting this close now. We understand how the operations are coming together. And Michael and I are meeting with members of Congress in the next couple of days to put that pressure on and to really engage media, new media, alternative media, and hopefully even the lamestream fake news will finally jump on this because the jig's up. And those people are going to have to start speaking about what's really going on. We're going to force their hand on all this, Clayton. So thanks for at least giving us the platform you built.
I love it. I mean, the work that you guys are doing is second to none. And we need more human beings like you in this world. What you both are doing is astonishing. Michael, have you seen any of these children? I know you've been on the hunt. You've certainly shared with us videos over the past few months of tents and baby bottles and all of the accoutrements that are being used to shuttle these children across. These facilities are locked down and blocked. Have you witnessed children coming outside, or have you seen any of that?
Now, we see children crossing the border. We just saw that the other night or the other day.
We have the drone footage.
Yeah, I was going to mention, and some drone footage, which was by one of our sources that we were just out with. He just made 48 hours ago or so, and there appeared to be girls out at one of the facilities. The one at the Walmart, or former Walmart, whatever it is, who owns the property, we'll find out. But there's another facility, that's for boys, right? There's another facility for girls, and that one we have drone footage of, which I can send to you, and you can see children walking outside. And in fact, you could measure their height with the right technology, which exists. It's easy to do.
Michael, I got to ask you, how in the hell is this happening where this isn't illegal? I mean, someone could, a 911 call to say there are 5,000 kids in this facility. Under what law are they allowed to be there and be protected?
We were talking about that last night.
What the hell?
Let's Clayton, what judicial system, where do we adjudicate anything that we know is wrong? Look at all the evidence we have of election tampering and theft. And where are we getting help? They're now going to try and arrest Sidney Powell for what they claim to be election tampering. They're projecting their crimes on those that are exposing their crimes. So I don't even know where you go. We don't have a Department of Justice. We don't even have a court system where you can get a fair shake at this. It's going to be the people, tactical civics, frankly, Clayton, and the people standing up the law all over again, like our Constitution demands with our civic duty. We have to get back to the basics here. That's where we are.
Clayton, these children are literally held in custody. They are not allowed at that Walmart, for instance, or former Walmart. They're not allowed to go outside. Occasionally, Carlos says, if a few very good boys can walk across the street to the McDonald's. I sent you the map. So you can see where this is at. This is in Brownsville, Texas. Everybody in Brownsville will know where that Walmart is. You can drive to it right now and go look. And you'll see when you try to get inside, they're going to come up in the golf carts. The guards they're very aggressive. They're going to be on their walkie-talkies and that sort of thing, sort of blocking you from any access. Yeah, it's amazing. This is right in front of everybody. And, what does it take? Just a SWAT team to go in there and arrest everybody involved. This is clear kidnapping, right? Yeah, and it's happening right downtown Brownsville.
Well, yeah, to your point, Ann, you need a Justice Department that would actually take this seriously. Instead, of course, they're more interested in going after Donald Trump right now on January 6th. Thank you both for what you're doing. I'll let you get back to it, and we'd love to be able to check back in with you as this investigation unfolds further, and we would love to speak with Carlos here on the show. If he's amenable to that, we'd love to talk with a whistleblower specifically on that issue. So thank you guys for what you're doing. Michael and Ann, again, we need more people like you in this world doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Clayton, very much.
And thanks so much to Michael and Ann for joining us here on the show and continuing to reveal these horrors that are being basically perpetrated by the United States government right before our eyes, and no one's doing anything about it. So thank you for supporting independent journalism. Again, being able to support amazing journalists like what Ann and Michael are doing is what we're able to do on this show. So when you subscribe for free to our show, it really helps. It really helps to get this message out there. You guys have been able to provide us with an amazing platform, independent media, separate from the corporate media, to be able to share and shed light on these big, important stories. Again, it's totally free for you to subscribe to the channel. So please subscribe or follow us, whatever you want to call it. I know they changed the name of it. It's not on Apple now they call it following a podcast. So you can follow a podcast. You're not paying for it anyway. I guess people got scared of the idea of subscribing like you're going to pay money. You do not have to pay money to follow us or subscribe to the show on Rumble or on YouTube. But if you would like to support us and you would like to, for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us because we have a Rebels community, our Redacted Rebels VIP community. And like I said, for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can click on the community button there and support us, become a Redacted Rebel. You can, I think it's like really, really cheap, like less than a cup of coffee, no joke, less than a Starbucks to support independent journalism. So go there, click on that and become a Redacted Rebel. And thank you guys so much for being a part of our show. We'll be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Until then, everyone, have a great night.